All right, man, peace. So, brothers, in the aftermath of Keith one-time Thurman's defeat at the hands of the boxing legend Manny Pacquiao, we're forced to ask a series of questions, not only about Manny Pacquiao, but also about the welterweight division, and specifically Mr. Keith Thurman. One has to wonder, was Keith overrated, at least in the minds of many boxing viewers who thought that at one time, at least prior to the injuries, that he was not only possibly the best welterweight in the world, but also possibly one of the top 10 fighters in the world no matter the weight class. I've always stated that I thought that Keith Thurman was the level below Errol Spence and a half level above Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. But after the injuries that he suffered and the 2 years off, even before the Pacquiao fight, I stated that I believe that Keith Thurman would win, at least if the old Keith Thurman showed up. If the Keith Thurman showed up to fight Manny Pacquiao, who showed up against Josecito Lopez, he was going to lose. Now, in all fairness to Keith and also to Manny, I don't think that the Keith Thurman who showed up was the Keith who fought Josecito. I just think that Manny Pacquiao was the smarter fighter and the better fighter. But were there things that Keith could have done that would have got him the victory? Absolutely. He could have worked behind his jab more. He could have used his head movement a lot more and his footwork a lot more. That would have put him in better positions to counter Pacquiao hard. Instead, he decided that he was going to totally disrespect Manny Pacquiao, not only because of his lack of size in comparison to Keith, but also because of his age. So like Manny stated before the fight, Keith Thurman, he talk too much. I got to teach him. And Manny taught Keith a lesson. Also, we're going to see here in this segment something that's those of us who've grown up hanging around barbershops or the basketball court or park benches, we know there's always a dude who thinks that he could beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. There's also a dude who always thinks that he could beat Manny Pacquiao in a real fight. They'll always say the same thing. No, not in a boxing ring, but if I had him out here in the street, I would knock him out because I'm so much bigger than him. That's basically the sentiment that Mr. TJ Houshmandzadeh, who was a former Pro Bowl wide receiver in the NFL, is going to state. He's going to say that he believes that he could defeat Manny Pacquiao in a street fight. And I was left wondering to myself, what is it about these brothers that have ponytails who are constantly trying to disrespect Manny Pacquiao? So anyway, they're going to talk about it and I'm going to chime in.
I'm back. Whitlock and Wiley, Reggie Bush and TJ Houshmandzadeh are back. Time now for a big story. Let's move to Las Vegas.
Oh, yes.
Where Manny Pacquiao handed Keith Thurman the first loss of his career Saturday night with a split decision win that gave Manny the WBA super welterweight title. Thurman had promised to send the 40-year-old into retirement with this fight, but Pacquiao knocked him down in the first round and was in control most of the night. I'm going to keep it 1,000% transparent. Don Julio knocked me out, and I'm the top.
Right, but that's still no excuse for why you did not see the fight before this segment, Whitlock. There are many websites that you can watch the fight online, even the next morning with you dealing with your hangover. You could have went to allthebestfights.com and watched the fight for free even after it was over.
Three guys.
Julio knocked him out the first round.
These three guys went to the fight.
Yes.
More impressed with Pac-Man or Thurman?
Much more impressed with Manny Pacquiao. Of course, a bit disappointed in Keith Thurman, but that's the difference between legends and great fighters. Legends do what they need to do. Great fighters, they'll do what they want to do until they come across a legend. Then that's going to show their ability to adapt. Keith Thurman did not show his ability to adapt until it was too late. And then when Pacquiao hurt him so badly in the 10th round, that pretty much cemented it. Unless Keith got a couple of knockdowns or a knockout, he was not going to be able to win the fight. I mean, because Manny punched that man hard in the midsection. Had Keith doing an electric slide. Keith was like, slide to the left. Manny said, slow down, I want to hit you again.
It was funny. It was about 6 o'clock. Wiley, here are the tickets. I was like, well, you coming? Boy, went to bed at 7 o'clock. I love it. I'm actually looking at this one and disappointed in Keith Thurman. Look, Pacquiao threw his hands like he's thrown his hands before. He's an 8-time champion in 8 different divisions. You know why? Because he could throw them hands. That speed that he has actually kills. And that's great for Pacquiao. But Keith Thurman, you didn't have more.
Not just his speed kills, but his heart kills as well. Pacquiao, that's one thing that you can never take away from him. That dude enters the ring with no fear whatsoever. That's why I stated before the fight that you never attack a combat sport athlete according to his spiritual dynamic or his spiritual aspect. That's a major mistake, because all those athletes do, all those combatants do, is they get even more locked in. Whether it's Muhammad Ali, Manny Pacquiao, Evander Holyfield, the list goes on and on. When they enter a match thinking that they're in a holy war, it's only going to get them even more focused. Or even in mixed martial arts with Khabib, once you attack their spiritual aspect, they're going to get more locked in. Now, bullies, you can attack them mentally, because the bully is used to always having the advantage carnally, physically. Once they see that advantage is not working, they don't have a reservoir to turn to. That's why Ali was able to break down Sonny Liston and George Foreman, because they were bullies. Once he broke through that facade and he made them understand, you're not going to bully me, they gave up. The both of them gave up. Even George Foreman gave up, because he could have got up earlier. And you'll notice, even though he complains that it was a short count, he didn't complain at the time. He wanted out. Mike Tyson was a bully. We saw what happened with him and Buster Douglas and also Evander. But when it comes to fighters with that spiritual aspect, do not attack fighters' religions. Leave that out of it.
Moments against a guy that you were bigger than, you could have overpowered, as you...
Well, that was part of the problem. Keith Thurman came into the fight thinking that he was going to overpower Manny Pacquiao. He got sucked into things. Had he boxed, he may have been able to lure Manny into a hard straight right that he was walking into, a la Juan Manuel Marquez, and he could have got the knockdown in the third round. Because Keith was able to hit Manny very hard numerous times, especially in the second half of the fight. But it was never stepping back. It was always stepping forward. So Manny was able to mentally prepare himself. Fighters like Manny, you have to catch them unawares. You have to ensnare them in a trap, bring them in, and then double the power of your shot as he's coming in. Once again, that's how Marquez caught him. Keith fought a very dumb fight. So we have to determine, was it that he just fought a dumb fight, or is his boxing IQ just not high enough to be able to adjust to what Manny Pacquiao was doing? Once again, Manny Pacquiao is a legend. So legends have a bag of tricks that even great fighters cannot ascend to.
Hey, TJ, he should have got inside more. I just thought that he could have dictated terms a little greater than he did.
The only way that he could have dictated terms was to use his jab. You said that Keith Thurman did not get inside enough. I agree with that, but that's because his jab was highly ineffective. Pacquiao had a much better jab than Keith throughout the fight. That's why he was able to get in much more efficiently than Keith Thurman was. So Keith started to swing for the fences when he saw his jab wasn't working. Freddie Roach, he made a very interesting comment in the aftermath of Manny's fight against Floyd Mayweather. He said that Floyd Mayweather had the best jab that he's ever seen in that fight against Manny Pacquiao. So what Freddie was really saying is that Floyd was able to dictate the tempo of the fight just with his jab and nullify Manny's offense just with his jab. When you watch Manny's fight against Keith Thurman, he actually was able to do to Keith a lot of what Floyd did to him. In many of Keith's attempts at an incursion or to come forward, Manny would just snap a hard straight right jab at Keith, and it would stop Keith's momentum to the point where he would have to set up again and again. So that's the reason why Manny was able to win this fight. He just outsmarted Keith. Now, were they to have a rematch, do I think that Keith could get him? Probably. He probably could.
Off, you had the tune-up. You knew what you were dealing with in Pacquiao, and he didn't have the proper response. I saw some self-correction. He stopped backing up with his hands down, which is like boxing 101.
That showed you he entered the ring with a lot of arrogance for whatever reason.
Beyond that, I just thought that he would bring more animus to the fight than I saw. Especially as a young...
I think he brought all the animus that he could muster. He was just in there with a legend. Like, you have to accept that. You know, when they get to that level, that elite level, that one punch shit, that goes out the window a lot of times. Don't get me wrong. There are cases of top level fights having those big knockouts. But for the most part, by the time you get to that level, the Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker level, especially when those fighters are strong and they've trained right, it's very difficult to knock them out with one punch.
Right, like I thought he would have brought a lot more energy to the fight. When the fight first started, from the first time the bell rang, Pacquiao controlled the fight. When he got that first knockdown in the very beginning, stayed aggressive throughout the fight. To me, I'm more impressed by watching a 40-year-old Pacquiao put on the show like this, because at that age level, to be able to go out there with the young guys and still hold your own, and not only hold your own, but to be able to dominate and control the fight, to me, that's extremely impressive.
I agree, sir.
Well, I'm not impressed by that. It's because you always got to compliment it with the birth certificate. Here's the thing. Errol Spence don't give a damn how old you are, right?
Right, but we're not talking about Errol Spence. Right now, we're talking about the Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman fight, brother. So the reason why we talk about Errol Spence is not just because of the age, but because of the skill set that Errol brings to the table. Also, the fact that he looks like he's going to be able to fill out to being a potential 160-pound champion. I mean, if all the cards fall in his favor. But at the end of the day, we have to assess exactly what occurred. What occurred is that Keith Thurman got outboxed and he got outfought. And hell, he even got outpowered. Because one person hit the ground in the fight, and it wasn't Manny Pacquiao.
How old you are. So I got to be careful to watch a guy who's being impressive at 40, but in the absolute sense, are you impressive when you get in there with the killers? He was impressive with the speed work, but other guys are going to neutralize that a little more.
I'm disappointed in Keith Thurman. I don't believe a 30-year-old should lose to a 40-year-old in any sport. Period.
I feel what you're saying, brother, but it depends on the levels. It depends on the levels, man. When you're dealing with these athletes that operate on a genius level, Manny Pacquiao operates on a genius level when it comes to that boxing. You can't train other fighters to fight like him. It's like you just can't train fighters to fight like Roy Jones or like Pernell Whitaker or like Floyd. They're gifted. They're not just talented. You could take talented fighters like Keith Thurman and build them up a certain way. But Manny Pacquiao is gifted, so they operate on a whole other level that very few people get to. And at 38, 39, 40, 41 years old, they're able to tap into certain mental reservoirs that other athletes cannot attain. That's why you have a Tom Brady in football who's still able to win and beat people with his brain.
So you hate Tom Brady?
No. That's a one-on-one, a boxing, track and field, where it's just you versus me. A 30-year-old should not lose to a... Now, did he have the amount of respect for Pacquiao that he should have? I'm going to say no. You see Adrian Broner, we was out in the casino until 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. You got a big fight coming up, bro. You need to be getting your rest. Did he have that respect, that fear that he could lose? Pacquiao overwhelms people, with his hand speed, but he beats you with his feet. Yeah.
His feet were extraordinary. His footwork was the best that I've seen him look in many years against Keith Thurman.
Gives you so many different angles. He steps around. Like when he knocked Keith down, Keith backs up with his hands down
and with his chin in the air.
Steps to him. And normally Keith can get out of range because he's so athletic. Well, Manny's feet are so good that as you're stepping back, he's stepping with you. And he was able to drop him. And so for me, I didn't think Pacquiao dominated the fight. I thought Keith Thurman showed a lot of heart.
He did. It was not a domination. As I stated in my Aftermath video, initially I scored the fight 9 rounds for Pacquiao, 3 rounds for Keith. But when I watched it again, I gave 5 rounds to Keith. But Manny he definitely won that fight. That should have been a unanimous decision.
He was taking some punches, and he came back. He didn't do enough to win, but he did make it a really good fight. But 30 years old, you should not let a 40-year-old beat you. Not in boxing, not at all.
Well, I'm going to use the birth certificate to say, because my expectations were low, man.
Right.
I thought Thurman was going to I thought he was going to knock him out, to be quite honest with you. And so
I wasn't quite sure whether or not Keith would knock him out, but I thought that it was a possibility. I thought that Keith would get a knockdown early in the fight and then be able to win a decision. Basically, what Manny did to Keith is what I thought Keith was going to do to Manny.
Pacquiao to get in the first ring, knock this dude down, win this fight. I think split decision. It shouldn't have been a split decision from everything I've read and heard about it. Pacquiao won the fight, and for him to reinvigorate his career at 40 years old, I can't help but be impressed myself.
I'm not going to say that he reinvigorated his career at 40 years old, because how many fights does the cat have left? But then again, with Manny, you never know. Manny might say, I just get started. I want to fight till I'm 50 years old. I want the middleweight title. Because, Manny is addicted to whooping people's asses, man. Like, Manny Pacquiao loves to fight. He loves to fight more than I've seen any other athlete love to do anything.
I love it. it is really giving juice to this division again, especially how it's going to play out. We got Spence, we got Porter coming up. See how that plays out. Pacquiao's in the mix. Floyd always sitting there like, in my back pocket, if I say unretired, that's a mega fight, whoever my could.
Absolutely. But what I think Floyd is going to do is he's going to mandate that Manny fight the winner of Spence versus Porter. And if Manny can defeat the winner of Spence versus Porter, then Floyd is going to come down from his castle and say, okay, I'm going to give you the rematch. Because via proxy, if Floyd is able to defeat Manny, then he can say, I defeated the guy who beat all these young fighters. So that means that I would have beat all these young fighters if I would have chose to get in the ring with them. That's what Floyd does. Floyd lets these other great fighters do his dirty work for him, and then he beats that great fighter so that he doesn't have to work as hard. But that's the only way that I can see Floyd getting into the ring with Manny, at least right now. Who knows with Floyd? He might decide to fight Manny. At least right now, I think that he's going to wait to see what happens in the Spence-Porter fight. He and Ellaby are going to try to get Manny Pacquiao to fight the winner of the Spence-Porter fight, which would only build up a potential Mayweather-Pacquiao fight down the line, and that's how they're going to sell it to Manny. Because I'm pretty sure that Manny does not want to fight Errol Spence, man. He knows that that's going to be a hellified fight. He's on record as stating that Keith Thurman hit him harder than any fighter that he was in the ring with. So can you imagine Errol Spence? If Manny defeats Errol Spence, like I stated in the previous video, in the Aftermath video, now he goes up there top 5 all time, no doubt about it. And you're going to have people trying to argue for him being number 1 all time. When it comes to accomplishments, there will be a great argument for him. Skill set, no. But accomplishments, if he were to defeat Errol Spence at this point in his career, and I had one dude in the comment section in the last video, oh, you're going too far with your imagine. Dude, it's called a hypothetical. Calm down, brothers. I'm stating if it were to happen, that would put him in a stratosphere that it would be very difficult to not consider the fact that he has a great argument as the quote-unquote greatest of all time just based on resume. At least that's how people are going to try to sell it. But I certainly would give his career far more weight at the end if he were to beat these top welterweights, real welterweights, than most of the stuff that he's done before. Because a lot of the stuff that he did in his prime, even though he was a better athlete in his prime back 09, 2010, it was smoke and mirrors. This stuff that he's doing right now is real. So I give him a lot more credit for what I've seen in the last couple of fights than some of that shit that I saw a couple of years ago, beating Algerian and a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys are clowns. But once again, if Manny were to defeat Errol Spence, wow. He would deserve a Floyd Mayweather rematch if he could do that.
Testing is. That said, beginning of the fight was different than the end of the fight. The energy and the moments were controlled by Pacquiao. Pacquiao looked like the younger guy. He took it to him. But then if you look at the CompuBox, you look at the punches landed, you start looking at the latter rounds, Thurman showed up. He self-corrected a lot of his...
He showed heart, man. He showed heart.
That's why it was an amazing fight. Best fight I've ever went to, witnessed, attended. That was my favorite fight. But it just didn't go the way as it should have. It should have been Thurman.
You sound like you Keith Thurman's trainer. For you to say it didn't go how it should have, then you should say what Keith Thurman should have done. And I'm not quite sure if Keith is built to do the things that we expect of him, because he has to have patience. He has to utilize his jab. We knew that he was going to try to come out fast, and I even stated that in my preview video that Manny was going to have to be able to survive the early rounds, and if he did, that would give him a great chance. Manny not only survived the early rounds, he dominated the early rounds. He dominated the first 5 rounds. So Keith would have to totally recalibrate everything. And I do think that he would do much better in a rematch. He'd probably defeat Manny in a rematch, one would think, if he utilized his feet more. But is he capable of doing that? Everyone is not capable of mentally doing what we want them to do.
Using more. Pacquiao using his speed, but then getting neutralized his speed because of youth. And then we're going to see how it goes.
When you're out in the ring as long as Thurman was, it's tough. Boxing is a timing and rhythm type of sport. Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Terrence Crawford, they're the best 3 in that division. You got some young guys. I'm a big boxing fan. For Philadelphia, you kick a kid by the name of Jaron Boots Ennis. Nobody probably knows who he is. I've seen him fight 4 or 5 times. He's another kid that can really fight.
I haven't seen him fight yet. I have to look him up.
But Pacquiao, he has to be careful with who he picks next. But I will say this.
Why do you say that, though, before you say this?
Oh, because
Because boxing is about matchmaking. That's why he's saying that. That's why people are lavishing Pacquiao with so much praise for his defeat of Thurman. Because Thurman is a guy that, even though it's clear Pacquiao picked him because of how he looked in his last fight against Lopez, the assumption was that Keith, at least the Keith who showed up for Pacquiao, would be the Keith that showed up for Sean Porter. And for Pacquiao to do what he did to Keith, now you have to start talking about Pacquiao being in that same realm of top welterweight fighters, like real welterweights. Because the subtext was that Pacquiao's welterweight tenure has pretty much been a masquerade. That's why they still are pushing him as the underdog, even though supposedly he's on Mayweather's level. Because when you look back at his tenure at welterweight, it's pretty much been nonsense. It's been smoke and mirrors. They put him in against fighters who are nice fighters, who they build up their names and, in the promotion of the fight. Manny goes out there, beats their asses. Guys like Jesse Vargas and Brandon Rios and Chris Algieri, guys that Mayweather would not even make his sparring partners, are fighters that Manny Pacquiao has been fighting at welterweight. So this was a bit of a surprise, because this is a real welterweight champion that Manny basically whooped his ass.
one of them young guys that's been active, that's been in the ring, that they gonna bring the fight to you.
TJ, earlier today we were at a pool party, and I overheard you telling several people that you thought you could beat Pacquiao.
There's no think to it.
What is it about these dudes with ponytails that just totally disrespect Manny Pacquiao? Somebody need to send this video to Pacquiao. Pacquiao gonna watch it and say, and let the ponytail get clipped.
Uh-oh. TJ, you don't want to walk them comments back? No, not at all. In a boxing ring, no, they just said in a street fight. Not a boxing ring.
Bro, in a street fight, it would be even worse. In a street fight, it would be even worse. Imagine getting hit by Manny Pacquiao bare knuckle in a street fight. I know you probably weigh about 225. What are you, about 6'2", 6'3"? Manny Pacquiao's 5'6.5", weighs about 150. I promise you, Manny Pacquiao punches at least twice as hard as you do. And it's no disrespect. I don't care how much you bench press. I don't care how many pull-ups you used to do back when you played in the NFL. I don't care how many diamond push-ups you used to do back when you was in high school. Manny Pacquiao punches at least twice as hard as you do, with a 100-pound difference or 75-pound difference. I promise you that. These fighters that train 6-7 hours a day and who have been fighting for 25, 28, 30 years, they have kinetic chains in their body that regular people cannot even access. That man, Manny Pacquiao, would do an Ali shuffle on you in the middle of the street and drop you like a bad habit.
All the bottles came. Were you sober? I had 0 drinks in Vegas, not one sip. In a street fight, ain't nobody 140 pounds whooping me. Nobody.
Manny gonna show up with a Filipino flag and the scissors. I promise you, he gonna lay you out and clip that damn ponytail.
You know what? Nobody. I'll say the same thing, but you know what, man? Now, not all you UFC fighters. Don't come talking trash. Y'all different. Yeah, leave me alone.
You gotta respect their precision. And look, I know you trained in boxing. I know you're astute in your boxing knowledge. The precision, it's not gonna be.
Thank you, brother. A lot of people do not understand boxing is a martial art. It's not just a pastime. People go to the boxing gym to get in shape and all that other shit. When you're talking about elite level boxers, that's a martial art. Striking is the most important part of the martial arts, and they've mastered it. Guys like Floyd Mayweather punch twice as hard as your best UFC athletes. Twice as hard. So imagine Manny Pacquiao. I mean, come on, man. That man will kill you with one punch.
Oh, you're just going to be able to grab him. I remember Sugar Shane Mosley, I said the same thing. I almost set up a fight. Lord, I almost set up 2 fights. Sugar Shane Mosley was one, but we kind of talked it out. And he was just like, we were in studio. He said, just defend yourself for 5 seconds. I said, oh, what? Go.
You know, it's a very similar story back in the mid to late 1960s. Muhammad Ali, he used to hang out with Jim Brown. And there was a publicist who was trying to make a Jim Brown versus Muhammad Ali fight. This was circa 1966 or 1967. And Jim Brown actually started to entertain it. And one day he was telling Muhammad Ali about it, and they were out in the parking lot. And Muhammad Ali just looked at him and he said, "Jim, try to hit me." And Jim Brown tried to hit him 3 times and caught nothing but air. And Ali, to his credit, did not try to hit Jim Brown back. He didn't try to slap him upside the head or anything like that. He just let Jim Brown throw 3 or 4 real punches at him, right next to him, just basically standing right next to him, and dodged him like Neo in the Matrix. And then told Jim, he said, "What I do, you can't do. Just because you're a football player does not mean that you can box with me. Just because you're big and strong does not mean that you can box with me." They even tried to set up a fight between Muhammad Ali and Wilt Chamberlain. And Ali tried to communicate that to Wilt Chamberlain as well. Just because you're a great athlete does not mean that that's going to translate to boxing. Boxing is a martial art.
Had it up so hard right here. He was just going to... It's a whole different animal, man. I think he was destroyed.
All right, stick around. Later in the show.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. To TJ Houshmandzadeh, brother, you don't want none of that. You don't want none of that smoke with Manny Pacquiao. I promise you that. That man is looking for dudes with ponytails. Ever since he got Keith's, that's his new thing. I don't want you to be the second guy. But anyway, peace.